The quiet guest. The train moved steadily through the countryside, its slow rhythm lulling the passengers into silence. Eleanor sat by the window, watching the golden fields stretch endlessly under the pale afternoon sky. It was the kind of quiet she had been searching for, a place far away from the noise of her life. She had left the city that morning, carrying only a small bag and a heart full of unanswered questions. It wasn't a planned trip, but something had told her she needed to leave. Maybe it was the letter she found on her doorstep 2 nights ago, written in delicate handwriting. "You are welcome here. There is a room ready for you." No signature. No address. Only a train ticket inside the envelope, leading her to a small village she had never heard of. She should have ignored it. A strange letter from an unknown sender? It wasn't logical. But something inside her had shifted the moment she touched the paper. It felt familiar, comforting, as if someone had been waiting for her all along. The train slowed as it reached a small station. A wooden sign, slightly faded, read Bridgestone Hollow. Eleanor stepped onto the platform. The air smelled of fresh earth and distant rain. A single road stretched from the station into the village, where old brick houses stood quietly under the weight of time. No one was there to greet her, but she wasn't surprised. She had expected this, an arrival without fanfare, a quiet step into the unknown. She adjusted the strap of her bag and started walking, letting the road guide her. After a few turns she found the house. It was an old inn tucked between 2 tall oak trees, its white walls slightly worn but still welcoming. A wooden sign above the door read "The Quiet Guest House." Eleanor hesitated before stepping inside. The air inside was warm, filled with the scent of tea and aged wood. The hallway stretched before her, leading to a small reception desk where an elderly woman sat, flipping through a book. Without looking up, the woman said, "You came." Eleanor blinked. The woman finally lifted her gaze, her eyes kind but unreadable. "We've been expecting you." Eleanor swallowed. "Who sent me the letter?" The woman smiled faintly. "The house invites those who need it." Eleanor wanted to ask more, but the woman was already reaching for a key. She placed it on the counter. "Room 7. Upstairs, end of the hall." Eleanor picked up the key. Something about the weight of it in her hand felt final, as if she had just stepped into something larger than herself. As she climbed the stairs, the floor creaked beneath her feet. The hallway was lined with doors, each painted a soft shade of blue. She found room 7 and unlocked it. Inside, the room was simple. A wooden bed, a small desk, a single window overlooking the quiet village. But what caught Eleanor's attention was the envelope on the bed. Her name was written on it. She exhaled slowly, picked it up, and opened it. "Welcome home, Eleanor." She turned the paper over. Nothing else. No signature. No explanation. Just those 3 words. She sat down on the bed, holding the note in her hands. The village was quiet, the house still. Outside, the wind moved gently through the trees. Something about this place felt right. But why? She didn't have the answer yet. But she was about to find out. Eleanor sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the note in her hands. "Welcome home, Eleanor." The words felt both comforting and unsettling. Who had written it? And how did they know her name? She placed the note on the small desk by the window and exhaled slowly. The room was silent, except for the soft creaking of the old wooden floor beneath her feet. The air smelled of lavender and something faintly familiar, like old books and warm tea. She decided to explore. The hallway was dimly lit, the walls lined with paintings of landscapes and quiet lakes. Each door had a brass number. Room 5. Room 6. Her own room 7. At the far end, a staircase led downward to where she had met the elderly woman at the reception. She descended slowly. The house felt alive. Not in a way that frightened her, but in a way that made her feel watched. Not by eyes, but by time itself. At the bottom of the stairs, she turned left, following the faint sound of voices. The door to a sitting room stood half open. Inside, a fireplace flickered softly, casting golden light on the wooden walls. A few guests sat in deep armchairs, their faces calm, their voices hushed. A man in his 60s turned to her. His gray eyes studied her for a moment before he gave a small nod. "First night here?" She hesitated before answering. "Yes." He smiled slightly. "It takes time to understand this place. But you'll see." Eleanor frowned. "See what?" Before she could ask, the elderly woman from the reception appeared in the doorway. "Miss Eleanor," she said gently. "Would you like some tea?" Eleanor nodded, feeling the weight of curiosity settle deeper in her chest. She followed the woman into a small kitchen, where a teapot was already steaming. The woman poured a cup and handed it to her. "You're wondering why you're here," the woman said, her voice quiet but steady. Eleanor looked at her. "Yes." The woman stirred her own tea, then met Eleanor's eyes. "This house finds people who are lost." Eleanor stiffened. "I'm not lost." The woman simply smiled. "Then why did you come?" Eleanor opened her mouth to answer, but no words came. The truth was, she didn't know. She had just felt like she had to. And that thought scared her more than anything. Eleanor barely touched her tea. The warmth of the cup in her hands did nothing to ease the chill settling in her chest. "This house finds people who are lost." The words clung to her, unwilling to leave. She wanted to laugh it off, to call it nonsense. But wasn't there some truth to it? Hadn't she left the city without much thought, driven by something she couldn't name? The elderly woman, Mrs. Caldwell, as she had introduced herself, watched her carefully, as if she already knew what Eleanor was thinking. "You don't have to understand it yet," Mrs. Caldwell said. "The house will show you." Eleanor didn't like that. She wasn't someone who waited for things to show themselves. She asked questions. She found answers. She set the cup down and stood. "I should get some rest." Mrs. Caldwell simply nodded. "Of course. Good night, Miss Eleanor." The hallway felt longer on the way back to her room. The soft glow of the lamps cast moving shadows on the walls, and the floorboards creaked under her steps. As she reached room 7, she hesitated. A strange feeling pressed against her chest, like she was about to step into something unfamiliar. She turned the doorknob. The room was exactly as she had left it. The note still rested on the desk. But now something else was there. A small leather-bound book. It hadn't been there before. Slowly she picked it up. The cover was worn, the pages slightly yellowed. No title. No name. She opened it. The first page was blank. So was the second. But on the third a short passage was written in delicate, old-fashioned handwriting. Some places do not belong to time. Some memories do not belong to us. But they find their way home. Eleanor's fingers tightened around the book. What did that mean? And who had left it here? She glanced around the room, suddenly aware of how quiet it was. The air felt heavier, like it was holding something unseen. She closed the book and placed it back on the desk. She didn't believe in ghosts, in haunted houses, in strange forces that found people who were lost. But as she climbed into bed, pulling the blankets over her, one thought refused to leave her mind. What if she wasn't alone in this room? And what if the house wasn't just watching? What if it was waiting? Eleanor barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she felt something, a presence, a whisper of movement just outside her senses. The book remained on the desk, untouched, yet it felt closer somehow, as if it had weight beyond its pages. By dawn, she gave up on sleep. She sat up, rubbing her eyes, and stared at the book. It was just a book. But why did it feel like it was meant for her? She picked it up again, flipping through the pages. More blank sheets until another message scrawled in the same delicate handwriting. You are not the first. You will not be the last. Her heart stilled. Who had written this? And why was it in her room? A quiet knock at the door made her flinch. She hesitated before standing, stepping carefully across the creaking floor. She opened the door just a crack. Mrs. Caldwell stood there, her expression unreadable. Did you sleep well, Miss Eleanor? Eleanor swallowed. Not really. Mrs. Caldwell nodded, as if that was expected. Would you like some fresh air? The gardens are lovely in the morning. A distraction. Maybe that's what she needed. Eleanor followed her downstairs, through the dimly lit corridors and out into the crisp morning air. The garden stretched wide, hedges neatly trimmed, a stone path winding between clusters of roses and old trees. It was beautiful, peaceful even. And yet Eleanor felt none of that peace. As they walked, she noticed a small, forgotten corner of the garden, a single bench beneath a towering oak tree. Something about it pulled at her, like a distant memory she couldn't quite reach. Mrs. Caldwell followed her gaze. That used to be his favorite spot. Eleanor turned sharply. Whose? The woman's expression softened, but she didn't answer. Instead, she gestured toward the house. Come, breakfast is ready." Eleanor wanted to press for more, but something in Mrs. Caldwell's tone stopped her. Still, as they returned inside, she stole one last glance at the oak tree. She had the strange feeling that someone was sitting there, watching, waiting, and maybe, just maybe, they were waiting for her. Eleanor couldn't stop thinking about the oak tree. It lingered in her mind like a half-forgotten dream, its presence unsettling yet familiar. She felt drawn to it, the way a whisper calls for attention in an empty room. After breakfast, she made her way back outside. The morning mist had lifted, but the air still carried the cool dampness of the night before. She followed the stone path, her footsteps light against the gravel, until she reached the bench. It was old, the wood worn smooth from years of use. She hesitated, then sat down, running her fingers over the surface. It felt solid, real. And yet, a chill ran down her spine. There, carved faintly into the wood, were initials. J.H. She didn't know why, but the sight of them sent a wave of unease through her. Had she seen those initials before? The thought barely settled when a shift in the air made her glance up. Someone was standing near the hedges. Eleanor's breath caught. It wasn't Mrs. Caldwell. It wasn't one of the guests. It was a man, tall, dressed in dark clothing, his face hidden in shadow. He wasn't moving, just watching. She blinked and he was gone. A cold weight settled in her chest. Had she imagined it? She stood quickly, backing away from the bench, from the tree, from whatever had just happened. Her heartbeat pounded in her ears as she made her way back to the house, resisting the urge to run. Mrs. Caldwell was waiting in the hallway when she entered. "You saw him, didn't you?" Eleanor's skin prickled. "Who?" Mrs. Caldwell sighed, looking at her with something between sadness and knowing. "The house chooses who it shows." Eleanor swallowed hard. "Who was he?" Mrs. Caldwell's voice was soft. "Someone who never left." Eleanor's hands trembled. The initials. The book. The shadow in the garden. This wasn't just a quiet house with old memories. It was something else entirely. And whatever it was, it had been waiting for her. Eleanor couldn't breathe. Mrs. Caldwell's words echoed in her head. The house chooses who it shows. The weight of the book in her hands, the initials on the bench, the figure in the garden, none of it was random. It all meant something. But what? She spent the rest of the day in her room, flipping through the book again and again, hoping for more words to appear. The blank pages remained silent. By nightfall she couldn't take it anymore. She needed answers. With careful steps she made her way downstairs. The house was quiet, but it didn't feel empty. Shadows stretched across the walls, flickering as she passed. She walked to the library, drawn by some unseen force. The heavy wooden door creaked as she pushed it open. And there, standing in front of the fireplace, was him. The man from the garden. Eleanor froze. This time he didn't disappear. His features were sharp, his eyes dark and knowing. He looked young, but there was something old about him, something heavy. And then he spoke. "You found my book." Eleanor's throat was dry. "Who are you?" A small, sad smile crossed his lips. "You already know." She shook her head, but deep inside she felt it. The name, the presence, it had been with her all along. "J.H.," she whispered. The man nodded. "James Harrington." The name sent a shiver down her spine. It was the name of the house's original owner. The one who had disappeared. The one whose story had never been told. Eleanor's hands clenched the book. "What do you want?" she asked. James looked at the book, then back at her. "To finish what I started." The air grew colder. The flames in the fireplace flickered wildly, casting shadows that seemed to move on their own. Eleanor took a step back. "You were waiting for me." It wasn't a question. James nodded. "And now you must decide." The book in her hands felt heavier than ever. The house was watching. The walls, the floors, the very air, it was all holding its breath. Eleanor swallowed. She had always thought she was just passing through this house, just another visitor. But maybe she had been part of its story all along. And now it was up to her to write the ending.